Good day, good day, everyone. How are you on this beautiful, beautiful day? We are going to be talking about everything happens for a reason. Or does it? Or doesn't it? This is our Powerhouse Mavericks weekly training. If you are joining us for the first time, we offer these weekly trainings on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to our Powerhouse Mavericks community right here on Facebook. At the same time, we do stream elsewhere in hopes that you'll come over to the Powerhouse Mavericks and join us if you are a female coach, consultant, or service provider who is really looking to collaborate, engage, connect, support other women in the community, as well as get the support and the accountability and even the coaching that you need in order for you to create riches in your work and life. So this is just one out of a number of benefits that we have for our Powerhouse Mavericks community. So take a look, come over and join us, and let me know how I can support you. All right. But again, as I mentioned, I wanted to have this dialogue, and I'm hoping some of you will join in. And I also invited that if anyone actually wanted to come and have this conversation with me, even on camera, you can always. There was a link in the Powerhouse Mavericks group where you can actually come into the room to have a conversation with me. But if not, at least leave some comments around this topic, because I know from my own post this morning, but also I had posted something, or I'm sorry, I contributed to a post on the same subject the other day in Michelle Jacobs' page, and she is one of our members. And so it just created a trigger for me. And I thought this would be a really good conversation to have, because it's also a really powerful tool for you to be able to use in your day in, day out life, as well as in your own business. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to understand each other's viewpoints on it. I really kind of had a prod poked at me back in the summertime around this subject. I was at a 4th of July party and just standing around. I can't even honestly tell you what the subject was that led to then my commenting, well, everything happens for a reason. And all of a sudden, the group, there was about 3 people around me, all of a sudden just got very defensive in regards to that, and just said, oh, really? Seriously? You really actually believe that when people are dying and people get, severely, injured and ill, so forth and so on? You truly believe that? And I had to stand my ground and say, yes, I do. And unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity. It didn't open up an opportunity to discuss each other's viewpoints and to really try to understand kind of how other people were feeling, including myself. And yet it is something that I'm always considering. I'm always thinking about. I don't know if it's the coach in me or it's just the fact that I'm always trying to put myself in someone else's shoes so I can be compassionate and empathetic and relate to them, even when I don't agree necessarily with their views or their beliefs, so forth and so on. But when it came to this subject, I don't know, it just gnawed at me. And then I would say in the last 3 or 4 days, like I mentioned, Michelle Jacob, she had made a post on this exact subject, and I responded to it, stating very much what we'll talk about today. At the same time, it then came up in multiple conversations that I had noted throughout the week. It came up in a client conversation with Janet and then Irene, where in Janet's discussion, it was, I don't want to bring up agree or disagree, but she validated that, yes, everything that she had been working on for this particular event, and the good and the bad that came from it, all kind of happened for a reason, and all prepared her for exactly what she's doing right now and what she will be doing going forward. In the case of Irene, when we were having that discussion, it was the first time I kind of got a glimpse on her, and trust me when I say she's okay with me sharing. But in her state of being at any point in time. And in this case, we kind of labeled it. I like to kind of put a label on things simply to easily identify with it. And so she created the label herself of victimhood, of her looking at things as why me, because that's exactly how the subject and the conversation went. Is I don't understand. I feel like I'm doing everything right. I'm, putting all the right things in place in my business. She has a big chunk of her personal life that she's also working on. She's like, and everything, is happening, and yet, why am I still struggling? Why am I still, feeling as if I'm still having to overcome things? Why am I always feeling like I'm taking 3 steps forward and 10 steps back? And so when she started having that dialogue, not only with herself, mind you, which probably had been going on long before our coaching session, but in this dialogue with me, I then had to kind of ask her to pause and acknowledge it and recognize it and sit with it. And then I asked her to say, okay, so how would you, I didn't use the word label, but I will here, but how would you label that whole dialogue that you just had with me and yourself? And she openly acknowledged that it was victimhood. So then I happened to bring up, well, do you believe that everything happens for a reason? And so all of a sudden that pops up again this week. And so we had a really deep and actually very productive on her part conversation in regards to it. And that's also what I want to share, is just how you can use this question, because that's what it ultimately is a question. But how can you use that in order to actually transform and shift and move out of a state of mind or a state of being that you don't want to be, and move into a place where you can look at things that are happening to you, good, bad, or indifferent, and actually kind of say, oh, okay, wait a minute. This is just a matter of X, Y, and Z, which we'll talk through. Does that make sense? So I just kind of, wanted to then frame this up in a conversation today. Like I do most of the time, I kind of wait for my week to week, day to day to kind of pass on. So then if something does jump up, oh, would love to talk more on this subject, but I have to run. I don't know who that is, but that's okay. That's all right. Let me know, like, put when you get back, put some dialogue into this stream, and let's just continue the conversation, because we can always, have it again or at another time. So don't worry that you have to run. I totally understand and appreciate that, but feel free to add your comments and your thoughts and your beliefs in regards to it, and let's have a dialogue around it. Okay. So where was I? Okay. So I take a look at it, and I can definitely appreciate others' viewpoints on this, especially if something tragic or something heartbreaking or something wrenching, is going on in one's life, or even in their community or the world. And we'll talk about, we've all are well aware of those things. It's hard to kind of say, well, it's happening for a reason. A young child is passing for a reason, or is suffering for a reason. This tragic gun shooting or car accident or even pandemic. It's hard to kind of wrap your arms around the fact that it's happening for a reason. So when we're, that close to something, I get it. I totally get it. I would say probably up until the last 10 years, I probably was very much like, you got to be effing kidding me if you think that, these things that are happening are for a reason, and yet my faith, I've always, even in my deepest, darkest, ugliest, painful, hours throughout my lifetime, I've always have hung on to my faith. And therefore there was a, element of my always knowing and believing that, yes, whatever was happening to me or my loved ones or the community in the world, it's happening for a reason. Call it divine, call it whatever you want, call it, just simply the universe, made up of, energy, call it whatever you want. But what I really wanted to say to that group back in July was more like, well, can we kind of consider some things that, in your own personal lives, and look at, the state of being during it, but at the same time after it. Because that's really what I believe it's all about, is that it's, something is happening at a point in time, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 years or 50 years in some cases. And, if one got beyond it, similar to Irene in regards to playing victim, if someone was able to get out of the why me, woe is me, and actually kind of say, oh, all right, wait a minute, let me take a look at this and see what it's trying to tell me, teach me, show me, take me, lead me, whatever the case might be, then, I'm expecting, let me watch my words, I'm expecting that those that can get beyond and then look at a situation, can then look at it logically and unemotionally, and really be honest with themselves about whether or not, there was something they learned, something that they gained, something that allowed them to transform, something that, helped them evolve, make a different decision, take them in a different direction, whatever the case might be. I've said that multiple times. I'm going to have to work on that. I just noticed it. But so, that's what I want anyone that might be, watching or listening to this to really consider. Remove yourself from being in it and try to just look on it and see if there was something that you gained as a result of it, or you've learned, or you shifted. I just know when, I kind of look back on some things, and I thought to myself, as I was sitting there this morning, prepping for this conversation, I thought, okay, so I could go really, far back to my earliest of memories. And we've talked about it here as far as, my earliest of memories is being, one of 12 children. I'm a middle child. I was very different than the rest of my family. The milkman's daughter, the postman's daughter, and really believed until I was about, I really took it upon me up until about I was 10, and went to my mother crying about it, saying, am I adopted? Am I really the postman's daughter? Am I really not a Bose? And she just kind of chuckled and said, give it some time and you'll kind of work your way into, recognizing that, yes, indeed, you're absolutely a Bose. Yet that whole experience between, being born and 10 years old really set a tremendous belief system within me until I was in my late 40s of not fitting in, not belonging. If I don't belong with my family, who do I belong with? And yet when I came face to face with it, I had to ask myself, what was the reason why I hung on to that and I believed it and I instilled it to the point where it affected every relationship I had. It affected every opportunity for a relationship, every opportunity to, join a group or feel part of a group, or to step out and, and take a risk to, fit in somewhere. And regardless of the fact that I, recognized that I did absolutely fit in any and everywhere that, I put my foot into, this belief just was ingrained in me until I came face to face with it and looked at it and said, okay, so what was the reason for that? What were the lessons I've learned from that? What did that do, to me as a person, and how did it help me transform, and or how is it going to help me transform right now? Because I recognized in my late 40s, I would have been that person who said, no way in hell was I, put through that torment, personal torment that I put on myself for so many years. There's nothing good that could come out of that. And yet I had to stop, and not immediately, but eventually be able to say, yeah, yeah, it kind of gave me a, kind of a backbone, and it taught me about real relationships, and it proved to me that yes, I did fit in. It challenged me to really look at myself and really appreciate and honor the fact that what I was telling myself and what was happening wasn't necessarily the same. And so as hard as that was, so then I started looking at other situations in my personal life, and I would share my other clients where that we've had this discussion, but I didn't ask them permission, and therefore I won't. Um, but I looked at, okay, so what was the reason why I met this guy, Michael, and moved to Florida? And yet, Florida for me was a very trying, troubling, life changing in not a good way. It basically sent me down. I'm even getting choked up. Sent me down really a path that I wouldn't have chosen for my worst enemy. Now, there was a lot of highs there. Don't get me wrong. And anybody who's listening to this who know me, I'm not attacking those periods. I'm just giving you my experience with them. And so, I had that experience for, I don't know, 12 years before I then kind of asked to move up to Atlanta. And in that period, there were some, it's when I moved into my bitchhood. It's when, I had a number of varying degrees of assault that had happened to me from an early age through, 20s and early 30s, that whole time period. Um, and, so then again, when I'm coming into this realization that everything happens for a reason, I'm taking a look at that going, so what did that teach me? What did that do to, help me evolve? What did that do to make me a better person? Because at the time, there was no way in hell it was. And so I had to logically and unemotionally, like I'm going to ask you to, look at all those instances and those events and those experiences and encounters and kind of my state of mind and being and what it did to me, good, bad, or indifferent. And I had to look at all of them and say, okay, so if it happened for a reason, what was the reason? And I was able to look at it. A lot of the reason definitely, came around humbling me. A lot of the benefits and the lessons and the growth came around me acknowledging the fact that I'm no different and no better than anybody else when I was living in a state of total arrogance and conceit and selfishness, so forth and so on. And the benefit and all of the pain, hurt, shame, disgust, all then, taught me that those are things that I don't want in my life and I don't want to be in my life. And therefore, it allowed me to have some clarity on who is it that I really want to be. And therefore, who is it I'm going to go and pursue myself and the relationships that I want, the type of jobs that I want, the type of companies I want to work for, so forth and so on. So it taught me a great deal. And then even I had somebody challenge, I won't even say question, but challenge me in regards to, okay, so what about like the assaults? What kind of, benefit did that have on your life? And I said, well, at the time, it certainly didn't. It sent me further and further down a very dark hole. But at the same time, when I started looking at it and started really evaluating it and praying on it, I was able to see that it taught me that I was better than what I was allowing myself to be at the time. And that it taught me that I needed to kind of be safe and secure and stable in the type of relationships that I was going after, as opposed to going after the bad boy. We all, many young girls and women love bad boys, but we all also learn that they're not good for us, let alone if they're nasty, boys and men. But so it did. Now these things didn't happen overnight. My recognizing these things didn't happen overnight. It took a couple decades for me to, then sit with it and say, okay, wait a minute. I do believe everything happens for a reason, but why? Why? What is that reason that these type of very painful, painful, hard, um, shameful events and experiences in my life, why they happen? And then I could go on with, you know, what I learned from being fired. And no one would say, well, yeah, being fired is a great thing, at least not at that very moment in time. Or losing $150,000 on a bad business deal in a matter of weeks or few months. What could be good about that, or what can be learned, what can be, grown out of all of that. And I can continue on because, like myself, my clients, my friends, my family, we all have had, I don't want to say horrific. We all haven't had horrific things happen to us. Bless the Lord. At the same time, we've all had hard, painful, maybe embarrassing, maybe shameful, maybe tragic, maybe just heart wrenching. Maybe, when it even comes to somebody else, let alone yourself, and you're sitting there going, why? Nothing could be worse than a child suffering. But I would challenge someone, but only because it does become evident, at least the people around them, because I've had loss of a dear friend who committed suicide, and we were in our early 20s, and I've had, friends that have lost a child. And in those dark, days and weeks, yes, it's very hard to see what could come out of it. And yet when you kind of step away from it and look at it, you can see that, how it's transformed them. If, in a positive way, I should say, if they don't go down, a path of, you know, of darkness, of victimhood, of just, kind of not being able to move on from it. But once they do, and if they do, then they are able to look at it and say, well, wait a minute, it's, taught me to appreciate, to be grateful, to be thankful, to know that I'm blessed. It did allow me to start a foundation. It did, set me on a new path of a career or of a relationship or of a business. It did allow me to really kind of transform myself into the person I really want to be. And if we could look at the community who's had a horrific, maybe a mass shooting, how can that, how can you tell me that that happens for a reason? If you look at it, whether it's Sandy Hook or any of the others, you can kind of see, well, wait a minute, it brought the community together. It provided, this hug, a community or worldly hug around those families. It transformed those families, and there were foundations and charities and causes that came out of all of it. It changed, gun laws and other type of reforms. And you can look at someone falling ill and suffering through a horrific disease, and you can kind of see for them and or their loved ones how it can transform their kind of commitment to helping to drive out that particular disease, to support other people that are suffering with it. So causes and transformation and at the community level, at the world level happens. When you look at the pandemic, there was a lot of conversations throughout last year in regards to it. Well, what benefit or what reason could there be that, the world is stricken with this pandemic? And you have to sit there and say, well, take a look at what happened and, and what's come out of the last, year and a half, 2 years. Now, on the darker side of it, there is those that are suffering continuously, those that, have developed PTSD, whether they had the disease or not. And you have to then say, okay, so what is all of that? What's the reason for all of that? And, one could look at those things and say, well, that individual now knows that they, are living with this and they have to make changes in their life. The family has, it's changed the family and their view on any aspect of it. It's definitely changed the communities, the world, the medical community, so forth and so on. So, I'm not here to convince anyone to believe that everything happens for a reason. Again, I'll mention that, my faith drives a great, if not 100% of all of it. But yet I can sit down with my journal. Hold on a minute. I didn't intend to show it. So, I can sit down with my journal and I can, just like I did with my notes, and I laid out 5 or 6 different things that have happened to me, over my lifetime, and kind of, can say, okay, so what was the reason for that? Like, why did it happen? And you can even look at even the smallest of things, in your day that's happening. Have you ever, for instance, gotten delayed? Have you ever gotten delayed getting out the door and into your car and into traffic? And the next thing you know, you learn of a major traffic accident that happened right in front of you. Like, not immediate, but that 5 minutes or whatever that delay was. I'll never forget that I'm here in Atlanta, and I'll never forget that with the bridge explosion on our I-85. It's not even a mile and a half away from me. And I was delayed. Well, I was delayed about an hour, but I was delayed that morning. I would have been out on the road. And yet I wasn't. So, what I would suggest for anyone is, one, let's have a dialogue. I want to understand anybody's viewpoints, agree, disagree, pro, con, whatever the case might be. I think that's just what community and communication and collaboration is all about. Is, we all have differences, and yet that shouldn't separate us. That should bring us together to understand each other. And so when this subject just started percolating and popping up in various places, the universe speaking to me once again, I just, thought it would be a good dialogue to have. And so what I would share with you is what I kind of share with my clients and with myself, as far as, whether you believe it or not. Let's put that aside. And let's look at things, because this is how I just approach everything, is let's look at things just logically. And when you have a situation, even in your business, when you have a situation and you feel yourself moving to the victim side of the house, oh, why me? Why is this so hard? Why can't I seem to? Why haven't I been able? Whatever that negative victim dialogue that you even initiate having with yourself, I would just have you pause and stop. And I would have you just look at whatever that situation is, the smallest of things to the biggest of things, and just ask yourself, okay, so what is this telling me right now? What is it that this thing is coming in and sabotaging, interrupting, derailing, blowing up, or even, because it's not all about the negative. It's like, why is all this swell of opportunity? Why is all this swell of grandeur? Why is all this swell of positivity coming my way? I could look at something yesterday. I was so busy yesterday, and back-to-back meetings, mostly client meetings. And at the end of the day, I was going to go play pickleball, but I was just physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted, but in a really good way. And I sat down on my couch and I just kind of put my feet up on the cocktail table, and Coco was sitting next to me. And all of a sudden, I just started giggling. It just so happened that I had a day of almost like post assessments of some speaking engagements, workshops, and a coaching client. And it was kind of that period, that time where I, was asking them for an assessment and how we doing, where we're going. Let's, look at next year and whatnot. And, the feedback was just, I won't say unexpected, because, I try to do my best for everyone, but it was just so grand that I didn't pay attention to it at first. Like I was listening to them and I was appreciating it and I was receiving it, but it wasn't until I sat down on my couch and I just thought, yeah, gosh, that's the reason why this is happening. So it doesn't always have to be about the negative. It can be about all the positive things that you just need to, whether you believe that or not, you just sit down and say, okay, so why is this situation happening to me? I had my technology blow up in my face the morning of a public speaking event just a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're never going to invite me back. And that was my goal, was to be invited back time and time again. It's a global, organization. And I'm like, why is this happening right now? And so I couldn't pay attention to it because I was literally going live. And yet the whole platform we were using just failed me. So we found a workaround and got it out. And afterwards, I kind of just sat there and just said to myself, okay, so why did that just happen? And quite honestly, that was one of those that I assessed yesterday with the individual. And at the moment, I asked myself that question. I thought, well, it's trying to kind of like help me release control, that everything had to be perfect was my conclusion, that everything had to be perfect. And that everything had to go, seamlessly. And, the tireless nights I put in, preparation I put in, I just had to let go. Because I tell my clients this all the time, let go and just don't focus on the outcome, focus on being present right here and now. And so I did just that. And yesterday's, accolades couldn't have been any sweeter. And actually the first comment out of her mouth was, I don't even care about the technology blurb because, it's technology, it happens. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, yeah, my reason and my understanding of the situation when I was beating myself up for a split second, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, she even confirmed I just needed to let go and not, try to control so much. So I would have you, kind of pause when something is happening, good, bad, or indifferent. Pause and just kind of say, okay, so what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to say to me? Where does this want to take me? I've had I've had some technology issues sitting here at my desk, and I look at them now and I say, okay, so any technology disruption or distraction, even like when it comes to Coco or something going on at my house, it's just asking me to pause. So I just need to pause. So ask yourself, okay, so what is this trying to tell me, lead me, redirect me? What is this? What is the reason for this happening right now? And try to get all that emotional junk out. So you're not looking at it as a why me or woesy me. You're just looking at it as, okay, what is this trying to tell me? Is this trying to tell me to rest? Is this trying to tell me that I shouldn't be working on this? I should be working on that? Is it trying to tell me that, someone or something needs attention that I'm not paying attention to? Is it trying to tell me to let go and not be so controlling? Is it trying to tell me to forget about the outcome of getting that client or getting that opportunity and just trust, and focus on everything that has to go into it? Just ask yourself a number of those questions. And when you're looking at, things that are even from the past, let alone what's going on right now, just do the same. What did you learn from it? How has it affected your life? How have you transformed as a result of it? How has it transformed people around you? How has it transformed the community or the world in some of our cases that we've been through over the last, decade and a half? I mean, I could think the 2008 recession, the pandemic, some big worldly things, mass shootings, Black Lives Matter type of movements. What are these very horrific looking situations trying to do to us, do for us, I will say, do for us. And if you're open and not closing yourself down, I think you'll find the reason for it in one way or another. All right. But I would love to understand your views on this, and maybe your practices, your tips, your advice. What has happened to you and what have you learned from it? And so continue to share and comment. Would love to hear it. All right. And then, like I said, Powerhouse Mavericks Training is a bonus to our Powerhouse Mavericks in our Facebook community. So if you're seeing this, because we are broadcasting out on Twitter, and it'll go out on, it'll be shared on Facebook and YouTube as well, then let us know. Let me know kind of how would you like, or what would you like to talk about, be trained on, be coached on as we move forward. Because we're planning big things for 2022, but right now we're staying present, and I'd love to know your thoughts and your views. All right. So I will see you for today, but have a rich week and weekend, and I'll be seeing you out on the Powerhouse Mavericks group. Take care, everybody. Bye.